Hello, and thank you for joining us, excuse me, for the Ask Andrew show today, Canada's first live streaming Facebook family law question and answer show. My name is Andrew Feldstein, and I'm the principal of Feldstein Family Law Group. We have offices in Markham, Vaughan, Mississauga, and Oakville, and both myself and our entire practice of lawyers practice exclusively in the area of family law. Today, our special guest is Barry Brown, a social worker and parenting coordinator. He is the co-founder of Barry Brown MSW Family Mediation Inc. and has worked for more than 30 years as a family counselor, mediator, assessor, and arbitrator. Through his work, he assisted hundreds of families during challenging times, including separation and divorce. As an experienced social worker and family counselor, Barry is here today to speak to us about co-parenting and conflict between post-separation parents. I wanted to add one thing to the intro. I've used Barry many times in a professional capacity. For many of my clients, he's an absolutely superb social worker that I strongly recommend to anyone. Barry, welcome to the show.
Andrew.
So I gave a little brief intro, but if you could tell us a little bit about your practice as a social worker, family counselor, and mediation that you do working with separated families.
I often refer with a little bit of mirth, a little bit of humor, that I have another name for my clinic, which is called Barry Brown MSW Family Mediation Inc. If I know who's calling in, I'll say, Barry Brown's House of Joy. A long time ago, I've been in private practice for 38 years. I worked with Children's Aid, very important work, but I couldn't sink my teeth into really understanding a family, working with a family, helping a family evolve through challenging circumstances, through their conflict. And so I opened up my own practice in Toronto. And I focused on individuals, couples, and families with a focus on families on behalf of kids. And so far, I'm still here. It's sad for people that I am this busy, but it's a positive reflection on my investment on behalf of working with people. And one of the bonuses of having been in practice for so long is you learn what works, what doesn't work. It's I'm still here.
Well, that gives us some background. And I'm thinking that sometimes there's a breakdown of a relationship and it can lead to a very challenging relationship between the parents. What would be your advice when two parties separate and how they can launch themselves into a positive co-parenting relationships? Because I often think the start lays the groundwork and the foundation for the future of the new co-parenting relationship. What do you tell people right at the beginning so they hopefully get off the right way?
Well, they're obviously seeing me on behalf of their children, usually anyway. I can see couples in counseling, but when they're looking to a co-parenting plan, I let them know that while they can separate, they can divorce, and that's unfortunate, but it happens to a lot of couples. They are parents for life. They will stay mom and dad for their children for as long as their children are children. They have a job. This is not an emotional issue. It can be emotionally motivated, but it's an intellectual issue. First, calm communication. You are planning the parenting plan for your children. You're going to give your kids two homes, a sense of I keep mom, I keep dad, they're still my family. That is their challenge. That they don't like each other anymore, they don't care to be together anymore, accept it. They are parents for life and they have a challenge. That challenge is to put together a sense of family in two separate homes for their kids. So the kids don't sense that they've lost a parent, that it has to be their focus. Stay calm. It's a process that involves thinking a whole lot more than feeling.
Now, one of the things I often say to clients when they are in these early stages of separation and learning how to co-parent is I try to tell them to put them on a path to working positively with the other parent, probably much like you, not from the mental health perspective or social work perspective, but from my side, I try to get them going down that pathway. And so often a client says, Andrew, I'm really trying to make this work with my ex. I'm trying to reach out to her. I'm trying to communicate to him, and I'm trying to make this work, but all I'm getting is roadblocks. And often I see it takes two to make it work and one to make it fail. And how do you deal with the advice you give to the parent who's on the receiving end of the, shall we say, poor behavior from the other parent?
I see parents together. I see parents separately. If it is a parent, a parent, not the parent, if it seems to me that there is that parent who is confounding the process, who is more emotionally driven, I'll meet with that parent. I'll lay the cards on the table. That person has a right to their feelings. I'm not interested in their feelings. I'm not their therapist. I'm here on behalf of their children. I tell parents, you hired me for your kids. You have your lawyers to represent your own personal interests. And if somebody is doing something that is screwing up the process, I'll tell them. I'll tell them you don't have to listen to me. You can disagree with me, but having sat in my chair for so many years, I'll say to a parent, I think what you're doing is not helping. I think that what you're doing is undermining the cooperative parenting that you say you want on behalf of your children. You have to change your orientation. You have a right to feel. You have a responsibility to think too, TOO. And in my forum, I'm looking to your thinking self more than your feeling self.
And that's probably, as a lawyer with dealing with parenting issues, one of the greatest challenges I find that I face in dealing with clients is it's dealing with a parent that feels justified in everything they're doing to minimize the other parent's role. And I like the way you put that, because sometimes it's having a very hard discussion with your own client to tell them the damage that they're going to be doing to the children by their behavior. And other times it's trying to work with the parent who's on the receiving end and trying to give them advice on how to overcome it. So I really like how you put that in terms of dealing with the parent who is making poor parenting choices. Now, what advice do you give to the other parent who's on the receiving end of it if the parent who's causing it isn't listening? Because that happens.
Yes, it does happen. There are parents who are entrenched in their sadness, which is coming out as anger, or entrenched in their anger alone. And the parent on the receiving end has every right to be upset if they're putting forth their very best effort to be cooperative, to be a good parent. My job, as I was saying, is to meet with the parent who is confounding the process, to share with that parent that if their purpose is to allow their children a sense of family, a sense of a cooperative family, and possibly even more so than when the family was intact, that parent's orientation has to change. If what you want to do is fight, then you don't need me. You need your lawyer each, and you will need perhaps a custody access assessment where the right to plan for your children is being taken away from you, given to an assessor that you've selected or is court ordered and a judge will tell you how you're going to parent your kids. If you want that, well, just stay entrenched, stay angry, stay hateful, stay controlling, adopt a position where you think you'll hand your children out like Smarties if the other parent is good. I want the children, they're mine. Christmas, what would you like? Well, they should be with me, of course. No, 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 no. This is not for you. They had mom and dad before for Christmas, so you'll have to divide it up somehow so that they can still sense we have Christmas with mom, we have Christmas with dad, for example. It's not I get the kids and I'll hand them out. Or there needs to be a reorientation from the neck up. I'm a family counselor, been around for a while. And children fare best when they have a sense of adequate balance in their relationships with both of their parents. Not that they've lost one and the other, that parent has been turned into a visiting aunt or uncle, and they keep the other one. I have two parents. I have a mom and dad. I have two homes, and it's not you live with me and you visit the other one. If I am unsuccessful in helping the aggressive parent understand that, then they're facing a custody access Section 30 assessment, where the decision making authority will be taken away from the parents. It's put into the hands of the assessor and then into the hands of a judge. And guys, if you want that, well, just keep sticking to your guns the way you are right now, and open your wallet. Because it's a horribly expensive process, but I'll do it because that's my job if necessary.
And that's well put, because one of the things I'll warn my clients is what the cost of litigation will be. And you try to have a really candid discussion when it's your client that's the obstacle or the problem in the parenting schedule, where you say to them, an assessment can cost $50, $60, $70, $80,000 sometimes.
Each
doesn't include the legal fees that you're going to pay on top of that to go to a trial, to have somebody make a decision what the parenting schedule will be like at the end of the day. And I often say to people, for these parenting issues that you're fighting about, you may end up spending a couple $100,000. You're going to have scorched earth where your ability to co-parent with the other parent significantly has gone down, because after a trial, no matter how much you hate each other now, it's only going to get worse once you've gone through a trial and you've spent all that money. And you may think there's a winner or a loser, and oftentimes there isn't, because it may be something you're not happy with and your former spouse isn't happy with, because neither one of you got to make the choice. And of course, the key point here is your kids are going to figure out that you're fighting like this, and the toll that you're taking on your kids is tremendous, and the damage you're doing to your children is tremendous. And I regularly will say to my clients, if you want this path because you're fighting over something, you really need to think about what it is that you are fighting about, and is it worth this? The most common fight that I see, and I don't know if it's different than you, Barry, isn't about the alienation type of concepts we're talking about, is one parent thinks they're much better suited to be the primary caregiver over the secondary caregiver, and then that leads down the pathway to many other problems when they see it. And they're forgetting that right now, the typical schedule of a primary caregiver would be one night a week for the secondary caregiver, and weekends Friday to Monday. Equal is 2 nights a week. So you're having this
correct
mammoth battle, especially over younger kids, about one night from after school to bedtime. And it's
Andrew, you are an erudite law practitioner. You are very practical, 2 feet on the ground. And I've admired that about you. You are so correct. Yes, parents will fight to the death for a day more or a day less a week when they're both equally available and both equal in many ways. You don't have to be a perfect parent to be a good parent. If one is this good and the other one is this good, or like that, they're both pretty good. I tell parents, most parents, as you say, will alternate weekends because it's the free time when they have time to be with their kids, and the kids have their parents free to be with. Friday to Monday is more practical because there's no parent interchange, parent direct interchange. It's from after school Friday until to school on Monday. And then you have Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night left, and Friday goes to the weekend. That's 4 overnights. You've got the 3 overnights for the weekend. There are only 3 things you can do with 4 overnights. One gets everything, one gets nothing. That's almost never going to happen unless by a remarkable circumstance. One gets 3 and one gets 1, or 2 and 2. So they're really fighting over 3 and 1 or 2 and 2. Is it worth $40,000? And kids, interestingly, have a sense of fairness. I remember a little girl, 5 years old. I want my mom and dad to have me the same. so I don't have to worry about them. It was so cute. And insightful for that little kid. And that's what the parents did. And I saw that little girl 15 years later on another matter. And she said, I was so fortunate I could grow up with a mom, with a dad. I had my family. Good. That doesn't always work, but it did for that little kid.
Well, and the data is very clear that children develop much better when they have both their mother and their father in their lives playing a positive and active role. And that's one of the things that parents, when they want to try and erase the other parent, seem to forget about. They don't keep that. They come up with reasons to justify the other parent isn't a good parent. And one of the things I frequently will say to my clients when they tell me, well, the other parent shouldn't get to see the children. And I ask them, well, tell me the reason why. And it's interesting because sometimes you get a really good answer. Well, my former spouse is addicted to cocaine and is drunk all the time and is abusive. Well, okay, that's a positive role model. I get that. And those are the cases where you do go and fight. And then I'll give you the other extreme that I hear, and you'll tell me if it's different in your practice. But, well, when the child goes with the other parent, they're not getting enough fruits and vegetables and they're eating too many hot dogs and pizza. And I say to them, so do you think it's better that they have hot dogs and pizza when they're with the other parent and have a relationship with them, or they get to eat fruits and vegetables and healthy food when they're with you? And by the way, most of the time, the kids probably aren't eating it at either home, other than being forced. But I don't know if you hear similar kinds of dynamics in the discussion, or, the other parent isn't capable of doing homework, or they don't know how to change a diaper, or they don't know how to give a bath. Those are the kinds of things I hear. And I say to the client, well, before you had children, did you know how to give your a baby a bath? No. Well, maybe the other parent, even if they didn't, they'll learn the same way you did.
Education is not my responsibility, parental education, but it is to a degree. If a diet is inappropriate, we can have a discussion about it. If parents with an S are putting forth an effort to stay parents, and that's why they're in my process. They want to be good parents. They care for their kids. And yes, I have come across situations where a mom withheld the father's parenting time because he bought the kid and himself a street hot dog. And that my child is not going to eat that rotten food. So I gently addressed it, saying, well, if street hot dogs are legal and they have a permit, chances are our society sees them as adequate for every day, every meal. Absolutely not. Dad or Mom, do you give your child hot dogs every day and that's it? Of course not. A mom did that. A dad said the mom's giving our children pizza too often. I went to the pharmacy in my building and I said, vitamins, minerals, etc., and the bad stuff, excuse me, and a pizza. And he held up a multivitamin bottle and said, most of what's in here can also be found in a slice of pizza. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a pharmacist, but can we work it out, folks, so that you're both equally satisfied that you're in sync with regards to how you're feeding your children? You don't have to be clones joined at the head to be good parents. Things like bathing every second day or every day. You're not going to go to jail for either. Some parents insist on bathing every day and some say every second day is okay. Talk to a doctor, talk to a pediatrician. It doesn't particularly matter unless you have an infant who's soiled himself 3 times that day, or a very sweaty kid who's playing soccer and he's going to school smelly. From the neck up, let's talk this through. And we usually can.
And the point I'm really getting at is a lot of people, when they separate, they want to insist that things should be done their way because they may have been the one who did things a certain way and they view their way as the right way and it's the only way. And they have to realize when they separate, it's not necessarily going to be just their way now because there are 2 homes. Obviously, similar bedtimes is a good thing, similar diets are a good thing, but you also can't control the other one. And the fact that food may be a little better at one home than the other home isn't a reason in my mind that one parent is going to get that extra day per week as you put it over the other parent, because the other parent may have other advantages too. The other parent may be better at teaching the child in school or better with helping the child with extracurricular activities. But the bottom line is there's benefits from both parents. And that's something that you have to say to your clients, at least in my area, to say, you need to realize that. And if you're going to say that the other parent really should have very minimal parenting time, there has to be an extraordinarily good reason for it, because that's not what the legislation says. And some people get it and others don't. And unfortunately, the ones that don't are the ones that end up creating a world of conflict. And the children, I think, probably are impacted by it. I mean, your story was of a child who did quite well from the divorce, from the sounds of it. And that's, to me, is a lucky child and a winner. And kudos to the two parents who recognized what was best for that child.
You don't have to be clones joined at the head to be good parents. You can be different to a degree, as long as the difference isn't damaging in an objective fashion or emotional fashion to the well-being of the child. As you say, if a child goes to bed at 9:30 at mom's and the dad insists on 8:30, so be it. It's what I would look to is your kid getting up in the morning at a reasonably easily? Is your kid falling asleep in school? If that extra hour is causing being awake, is causing concerns at school, and I'll call the teacher. And I've had kids who are falling asleep in class, young ones, and I have shared with the parents both. The earlier hour seems to be important. I had a situation where a dad could not get his little girl, who was 10, to school on time. And she was going to bed on time, but dad couldn't get himself in order well enough and quickly enough in order to get her to school on time. The school was complaining. The child was embarrassed walking in late. And I simply told the dad, if you can't manage the mornings, then, and your child is suffering because of it, and the kids said so, the school said so, and the school was getting upset, this was a private school, then you should not have a school night overnight in your care. Very bright father, good father in every other way. I told the dad it would be my recommendation, this one was an assessment, that if he could not get his child to school on time, I'm not saying an hour early to play, just get her there before the bell, it would be my recommendation that he not have overnights. And he couldn't do it. A month later, the mother called again. It's not happening. It was my recommendation that he not have overnights on a school night. And that was because it was not in the best interest of the child that he do so.
And that to me is a great example, because that's, like you said, it's a unique situation. Sometimes you have clients who they have to leave at 5 o'clock in the morning for their job. And it's very difficult to get your children up and ready for school when you're not there. That makes you create other kinds of parenting plans that take into account those kind of work schedules. But the real issue, as I see it, is you got to tailor it to work for that particular child. And that was a unique circumstance, and you tailored it for that child. It's unfortunate the father couldn't get his act in gear and in that particular case. And, you know, when you talk about bedtimes, I think of one case I had where I think in that case, it was the mother who had the child sleeping in her bed. And then when the child went to the father's home, there was all sorts of challenges with sleeping, because the father didn't believe that the child should be sleeping in the parents' bed and should sleep in their own room. And that's an example of where people need to co-parent a little better.
I share with parents, and that comes up so frequently, what you want to instill in your child, to engender in your child, is age-appropriate independence. If a kid is having a nightmare and the kid's 4 years old, 5 years old, 8 years old, jumps into bed with mom or dad, okay, the kid's having a nightmare. Thunder, similar. But you want to engender an ability in the child to gain a sense of self, age appropriately, to be able to be in their own room. If you need the door open, okay. If you need a nightlight, okay. But to create an awareness in the child that I can't be safe. I can't go to sleep. Going to sleep, by the way, means letting go of everything. Am I going to be safe? You want to engender an awareness that, yes, I'll be safe on my own. My room is next to dad's, next to mom's. I have a nightlight, the door's open. And I share that with parents. And for the most part, they will agree. Although culturally, some families, some cultures, everybody sleeps together, but not for the norm. Age appropriate independence is important. You spoke about being flexible with regard to expectations in parenting. A police officer, a fireman, a fire person, a police officer has a rotating schedule. And if you want your child to still have that police officer parent, a schedule will have to be put into place that will accommodate that parent's schedule. The other parent can say, well, that's ridiculous. There's no consistency in my child's life. Well, you married a police officer. And that police officer had the income that that person makes is on a rotating schedule, 24 hours a day. And on behalf of your child having two parents, then we're going to have to dance to the tune of the parenting of the police officer's schedule, because that's the, if you want every second weekend and half the week or one night a week or whatever, it won't work for that parent. You have to be creative. And again, I say, this process of planning, putting a parenting plan together on behalf of children in the case of separation and divorce is addressed from the neck up primarily. I need thinking parents. What is practical here for your kids' needs? As you said, if a parent has to leave for work at 5 o'clock in the morning, well, early mornings aren't going to, nights on those days, on those mornings, aren't going to work, because you can't leave a 6-year-old to get himself or herself up in the morning, have breakfast, and get himself or herself off to school.
Well, it's very true. And, I know when we've had policemen or police officer or firefighters as clients, the schedules usually get set with a theoretical approach of how much time is going to be allocated. And then that police officer has to give their work schedule within a very short period of time that they receive it to the other parent for them to work out the schedule with parameters. And sometimes we involve someone like you to be a parenting coordinator if they can't agree on that schedule for that next block of time when it's released. Most of the time, it seems people are able to work it out because, like you said, you marry a police officer, that brings in the income, then you got to accommodate the police officer's schedule.
And I should point out, I tell every parent, especially when there is conflict and they have to go into acrobatics to manage planning and conferring and scheduling, I say, folks, this is a time-limited problem. The Children's Law Reform Act that governs custody and access goes to 18, but that's ridiculous. A person can marry at 16, be a parent at 16. They can join the military at 17. So you can be a parent in the military, a spouse, and you're still under the umbrella of custody and access. This is really a time-limited problem, and it doesn't go on that long. In general, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, but by the time a kid is 14 or 15 and surely 16, the next year they go to university at age 17 usually. By the time they're hitting 14, 15, the kids will say, Dad, Mom, I'm tired of going back and forth. I want to stay here more, and I'll come to see you on the weekend. But they want to stay with their friends much more. So it's a time-limited problem, and it will go away. You're going to see the other parent at your child's graduation from high school, from college or university. You're going to see them at the births of their children. It doesn't go on forever. You will be free of this soon. Now, it's tough to say that when a child isn't even born yet, because we've had cases like that. But kids 10, 8, 12, soon it'll be over. Put something in place that will give your child a sense of family for the next few years, and then you'll be free of this. But not yet.
Thank you, Barry, for being on the show. It's been a pleasure having you. For anyone who's interested in learning more about Barry and his work, you can contact Barry at 416-927-9464 or at info@fammed.ca. That's fammed.ca. Thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure.